What's going on? I wanted to talk about something, and I'm going to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I did a video about this. I did 2 videos about the Black Lives Matter movement. And I don't support this bullshit anyway, because I don't identify as being so-called black. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, because I know the legal implications that it does have. But I did 2 videos. One was called Fuck Black Lives Matter, and the other one was talking about how I found it odd that so-called black women supported the LGBTQ community, but then they'll sit there and call black men derogatory gay slurs. So I thought that was fucking odd, and something was really weird about it. Well, I'm reading this article, and it's talking about the queer black history of rioting. Okay? The first Pride was a riot. This June, the LGBTQ community has routinely shared those 6 words across social media. Activists and demonstrators in support of Black Lives Matter use them to remind us that there is a clear through line between the fight for LGBTQ plus rights. What the fuck is the plus rights in the United States, and a revitalized push for anti-racist legislation that protects people of color. Remember, people of color, colorable means they don't exist in law, especially black Americans. Well, at least they didn't say African Americans. Okay, so let me explain this to you. And when I'm saying this, I don't have any angst or hate against so-called gay people, whatever. I don't have it, but I have an angst and hate against bullshit. This is why I make videos like I make. I want y'all to understand this. I don't hate anybody. I don't give a fuck. Okay? I really don't care. The only thing I care is that people know the truth. So when it comes down to the LGBTQ movement, or the big Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Lives Matter movement is nothing more than a lesbian, gay pride movement. It has absolutely nothing to do with straight heterosexual people. It's a fake movement. And what it is to use so-called black people, because they did this in the past, to use black people as a so-called springboard for whatever their agenda truly is. They did this shit in the past. I don't understand why people do not learn from past history. It tells you the same shit. It's the same thing when the so-called Black Panther movement was formed. Then all of a sudden, all these civil rights movements were coming. And then all of a sudden they had, they used feminism to destroy all the civil rights movements. They do the same shit over. So leading queer championing organizations such as GLAAD are encouraging the LGBTQ plus community to look within, revisit history. The anger that has erupted after the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and thousands of other black people, remember, look at that phrase, is deeply historically connected to gay liberation. See? What the fuck does that have to do? What the hell does that have to do with the two? They do not correlate. The first Pride was indeed a riot, but history has been written to disqualify and erase the efforts of those on the front line, at the front lines. The black queer community, black transgender women in particular. Okay, let me explain this to you. What they're trying to do this is why I tried to tell you in the video where I was talking about MGTOW. They are MGTOW and feminism. They are homosexual agendas. They have nothing to do with heterosexual males. The problem is with this corrupt legal system, what they did is they created a system to enslave the men by using the women. That's what I was trying to tell you. I wasn't trying to say that men that go their own way and to say, you know what, fuck it, society's norm is not for me. You're more than welcome to do that. I have no hate against that. It's your life. You do whatever the fuck you want to do. I just like you to understand the truth. To unpack the fragmented and compartmentalized history, we first need a little background. The 1960s are considered the last great reform era in American history, a time where citizens grew fed up with violence and injustice. In addition to the civil rights movement and ardent efforts to overturn Jim Crow laws, marginalized community also fought for women's liberation. See, feminism was a trick to derail so-called black people from their movements. This is history just doing its, it's playing itself out again. The abolishment of the police brutality at the end of the Vietnam War. At the time, LGBTQ plus individuals were regularly arrested for having consensual sex that violated sodomy laws, kissing in public, gathering in bars, or other simply existing if they were perceived to be queer. Remember, being perceived to be queer and actually being so-called black have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Nothing to do with each other. But this is where you get your police, because the police are nothing more than actors. They're all acting in this grand plot to deceive your ass. But I try to do videos telling you who the police truly are. Okay? Gathering in bars or other simply existing if they were perceived to be queer. Get the fuck out of here. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual considered being gay a mental disorder. In fact, the American Psychiatrists Association didn't remove homosexual as a disorder until 1973. While Stonewall is remembered as the riot that sparked the gay liberation movement as we know it, others came before it, most in protest of unwanted police surveillance and brutality. See how they try to hijack all that shit and say this is what these movements were for? I'm actually going to do more research to see exactly. Brutality against disenfranchised queer people of color. Wait, hold up. I thought this was... Okay, let me get into this more. As outlined books such as City of the Night and Gay LA History of Sexual Outlaws, Power Politics, and Lipstick Lesbians, consider the first modern gay uprising to be the Cooper Donuts riots. What the fuck is that? I might have to look that shit up. It occurred in May 1959 after law enforcement arrested LGBTQ plus folks without probable cause as they hung out at a gay-friendly donut shop. This is why they always use police for psyops. Police are always in psyops. They're always going to be there. There's nothing you can do about it. That's why I tried to read the article out of the budget of the police to kind of inform you of who they truly are. This was followed by the Compton's cafeteria riot. Damn, I can't even speak. In August 1966. And the Black Cat riot in 1967, during which officers beat customers and arrested 14 people. Each one was fueled by angry sex workers, trans and gender non-conforming people, and drag queens who faced violence and discrimination. LGBTQ plus. What the fuck? All these damn letters. People were thrown out of hotels. They were stabbed. They had their breasts cut. They were mutilated because of their genitalia. Felicia Fames, a self-described trans woman, told The Advocate in 2018. All right, I might have to look that up and see if that's really true. Because sometimes, with history, people like to revise history. We're tired of being arrested for nothing. And then came Stonewall, a series of events that perfectly illustrates how revolutionary elements of the fight for civil rights influence gay liberations. Now, here's the one thing you got to understand. Civil rights and the so-called black civil rights movement was bullshit. It was all bullshit. You're asking for rights that you already fucking had. There are hundreds of contradictory and inconsistent accounts of the Stonewall riots, as I said. But what do we know is what we do know is that on the night of June 27th, 1969, the Stonewall Inn witnessed a violent police raid on drag queens, transgender people, and gay people, a majority of whom were black or brown. These events led to 6 days of protests on Christopher Street in New York City, what we know as the Stonewall Uprising. They said this shit like it was a fucking war. Some of the leading figures fighting for justice at Stonewall were black transgender women. Y'all people don't understand. I have nothing against so-called gay people, but you have to understand that these movements are nothing more than hijacks to so-called black movements that were made in the past. And then they're trying to say, well, so-called black women were transgender. There wasn't that many goddamn so-called black transgender women back in them days. Oh, that I know of. Shit, I wasn't alive, but you never seen that shit. So let's see. Most famously, Marsha P. Johnson, who, when asked, would say the P initially stood for pay it no mind. In the context of her gender, was a performer and activist. According to the Marsha P. Institute, she described herself as gay. Well, that's a self-description. You see what I'm saying? Transvestite and a drag queen. In several books, including Lillian Fetterman's Gay Revolution, The Story of Struggle, Johnson is remembered for climbing a lamppost and shattering an officer's squad car with a heavy object, which promoted other protesters to strike the police with pennies, beer cans, and glass bottles. Angry lesbians, angrier drag queens, excessive mourning, staggering, heated racial tensions. The example of civil disobedience set the women's movement, the anti-war protesters, the Black Panthers. All the elements were present, and only once a single flame was needed to ignore the bonfire, noted author Edmund White in the anthology The Stonewall Reader. Sylvia Rivera, a brown trans woman who participated in anti-war black liberation marches, also were heavily influenced by the Stonewall riots and subsequent posts. So did Major Griffin Garcia, a black trans activist who eventually worked for the transgender variant Intersex Injustice Project. Okay, now I'm not going to say that so-called gay people have not been done unjustly. I'm not going to say that. That would be a fucking lie. But the reality is, if you read through this whole thing, there's a paragraph in the bottom that really kind of is crazy. It says, the reality, we're creating our own solutions. We've always have. Hearns continued. We acknowledge, oh shit, no, that's not the one I wanted to read. Oh yeah. We acknowledge our own power and our own talent, our own brilliance. Black trans people will never be extinct. No matter how hard people work to try to get rid of us, there will always be more to come. So this kind of puts the agenda of the so-called gay agenda that people were talking about. It's true. You know what I'm saying? You can't argue with it. It's fucking true. They're telling you this through this context. Now, I already told you that the Black Lives Matter movement was bullshit from the beginning. I did a video when I was in Egypt. I said, fuck the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't fuck with that shit. Now, if somebody's LGBTQ, I don't have any problem with how people live their lives. But being so-called gay and being so-called black are two different things. You can be gay behind your door and nobody knows what the fuck you're doing. But when you're so-called black or have a different skin tone, I can't hide that. You see what I'm saying? So your struggle and so-called black people's struggle is not the fucking same. It is not the same. So I just wanted to read this because this was really kind of crazy to me. I'm going to go through this and research some of this stuff. But I just wanted to put this out. I'm out.